Hey, how you doing? This is RJ. Today I'm going to go down a really deep rabbit hole because I want to talk about the difference between your traditional hero story and your feminist hero story. And I'm going to use Captain Marvel, the movie, as my example of your feminist hero story because I would say that's a story that right now people are the most acquainted with. However, I could use any number of stories from the comics. I could use Kamala Khan's Miss Marvel, or Kate Bishop's Hawkeye, or Jane Foster's Thor. It's rampant throughout comics right now. And before I begin, I want to say that when I talk about a hero and a hero's story and a hero's journey, well, I talk about it in much older terms than most people usually do. I use original terms, Aristotelian terms that Aristotle used in 400 BC when he defined these things, and he was working off of stories and ideas that preceded him by at least 800 years. So this has been around in our culture, Western culture, for more than 3,000 years. Now, most people today would use your modern hero's journey, but honestly, I think that your modern hero's journey is just a loose retelling of some of what Aristotle said, using loosey-goosey language to make it more palatable to people today, because Aristotle used very strict, rigid language because he believed that when you define things in a very strict and rigid way, you get to understand them much better, which I completely agree with. So I use these older Aristotelian terms, and according to these terms, your hero is a paragon of virtue. And the thing is that that whole idea of virtue, it is tied up with a whole lot of supporting religious ideas. And I'm going to go over that briefly because it's supremely important, because your feminist idea of a hero, well, that is almost the exact same thing. It lifts that structure from the old religious ideas and just imposes it upon an individual or a group of individuals. Now, many people, many academics even, have talked about the fact that you have feminism and it's basically a religion. And this is why. Because they take those old structures, they don't create anything new. They just take those old structures, those old Christian structures, they lift them from where they are, they erase any idea of your supernatural, and then impose that structure upon your individual female or your group of individuals as females. That's all that they do. So your traditional idea of your hero as a paragon of virtue, it basically goes like this. You have an all-powerful God. All right, even Aristotle believed that there was a one all-powerful God. He just called him the prime mover, and his teacher Plato did the same. He just called him the good. You have this all-powerful God, and his will becomes reality. That's what reality is. It's the will of the all-powerful God. And your hero wishes to actually take his actions and have them bear fruit. That is to say, he wants to will something to happen. So how does he actually accomplish that? Well, he accomplishes that through virtue. Because the thing is that the head of all the virtues is prudence. All the other virtues proceed from prudence. First you have prudence, then you have justice, then you have courage or fortitude, then you have temperance, and it all proceeds down like this. But prudence is what you need first, and you can't have any of the others without prudence. And prudence is correct decision-making. That is to say, decision-making in accord with reality. And as I said, reality is a reflection of the divine will. So what your hero does is, your hero wishes to accomplish an ends. He wishes his actions to bear fruit. So what he needs to do is take a cold, hard look at reality and say, okay, these are the independent rules of reality that I need to concentrate on right now, and I need to act in accord with those rules. And when he acts in accord with those rules, he is being prudent, that is to say, he is being virtuous, and what he does through that process is he conforms his own will to the divine will, and therefore, since the divine will defines what reality is, then the hero's will actually becomes efficient. That is to say, his actions bear fruit, and he gets to accomplish the ends that he actually sets out to accomplish. Now, as I said, your feminist ideology takes that entire structure, erases God from the entire thing, and just imposes it upon the individual. And I think it can be looked at very easily by looking at two axioms that are extremely familiar, one from the old system, one from the new system. Now, this old axiom from the old system would go something like this. Trust God, he can do anything. Or believe in God, he can do anything. But the modern form of that is believe in yourself, you can do anything. Now you see, those axioms, both of them, are the exact same, except in your older one, you have two actors. You have the individual and you have God, whereas in the newer one, you only have the individual. That's why you believe in yourself. Why do you believe in yourself? Because, well, in this structure, you make yourself God. So you believe in yourself because you're God, and because you're God, once you believe in yourself, you can do anything. That is to say, you can define what reality actually is. Now, it's no coincidence that in the older axiom, you have two actors, whereas in the new axiom, you only have the one actor. That's because in your older systems, there were two ideas of what truth is. That is to say, there is objective truth and there is subjective truth. Now, very briefly, objective truth concentrates on the object, and it is true whether a person knows it, likes it, or believes it. So let's take, for example, the sun generates heat. The sun generates heat is a truth, and it is true whether you know it, whether you like it, or whether you believe it. So it's an objective truth. But a subjective truth is a truth that is only true because you either know it, like it, or believe it. So when I say I like chocolate ice cream, I'm saying I like something, and it's only subjectively true. And in that older system, God is the objective truth, and the person is the subjective truth. And your subjective truth has to put itself in conformity with objective truth through understanding what reality is, through the virtues, in order to actually have their actions have any effect. But in your newer system, there's only subjective truth. There is no such thing as objective truth for feminists. They believe that objective truth is part of the patriarchy. So the only truth that exists is because someone knows it, likes it, or believes it. So as soon as you have someone believing in themselves, well, they can accomplish anything. That is to say, they get to define what reality is. And this little axiom of believe in yourself, you can do anything, is the end point of every feminist hero's journey. So, first we have to look at the question, why does the woman have to make this journey to begin with? Well, as I'm always saying, all these far leftist ideologies, they all boil down to power. And this one boils down to power. So we have to look at their strict way of defining what power is. So according to feminism, there's two different kinds of power. There's male power and there's female power. And whenever they use the word power by itself, they mean male power. Whenever they use the word power with some kind of female qualifier, then it is female power. Or whenever they use the term empowerment, that is automatically female power. Now, in their ideology, male power is qualified by the earmarks of being destructive and domineering, whereas female power is qualified by the earmarks of being cooperative and creative. So, just a quick aside here, you'll notice that baked into the very fundamental ideas of their feminist ideology is that men are automatically evil and women are automatically saints. Because men automatically have male power, which is destructive and domineering, and women automatically have female power, which is cooperative and creative. So whenever you hear them talk about we want equality, no, they don't want equality at all. They want the male to be dominated by the female because they believe the male is automatically not just inferior, but evil. So the question becomes, if women are automatically saints, if they're automatically born with female power just by virtue of being a woman, and that female power is cooperative and creative, why do they need to go through a journey in order to get to an endpoint where they believe in themselves and can do anything? Well, the answer to that is that the world is dominated by male power. That is to say, the patriarchy. And so from the time that they are born, these women are subject to the domineering, destructive male power, which seeks to take away their own power at every turn so they can't utilize it and believe in themselves so that they can do anything. And this is what the hero's journey in a feminist story actually becomes. And we see it exemplified in this Captain Marvel movie. You have Carol Danvers. And before we even begin, I've listened to a number of interviews with the creators of the original stories of this Captain Marvel. I've listened to the writers for this specific movie. I've listened to the directors of this specific movie. When they talk about the movie, they talk about the female relationships in this movie and how all of those female relationships are cooperative and creative, so that you have these two females. You know, you have Rambo and Danvers in the flight school. They are competitive, but they always put the emphasis on them being competitive in a cooperative way. That is to say, their competition helps each other build up who they are and their power. So this is quite specifically how all the female relationships are portrayed in this movie. And this, by the way, is why they had to make Mar-Vell a woman. There is no way they could have left him a man and had him still be a positive role model for Carol Danvers, because as a man, he would have had to exercise destructive and domineering power automatically, and therefore could not be a role model. Which brings us straight into Carol with her male relationships. All of those male relationships are domineering and destructive. You know, even if you've only watched the trailers for this movie, you've seen Captain Marvel being pushed down, being thrown down over and over again, and how she's been told to stay down, but she always gets back up. So that is your representation of your male power for this movie. And then you have Carol Danvers actually gaining superpowers. And the Kree take her and put physical blocks on those powers so that she cannot fully utilize them, which is easy for them to do because Carol Danvers has been subject to the mental equivalent of those blocks on her power throughout her life by being shoved down by men and being told to stay down. So what Carol needs to do in her hero's journey is to separate in her mind those two kinds of relationships through her memories. She has to separate the male, dominating, destructive relationships from the female, cooperative and creative relationships, and at the point where she realizes that she can reject all of that male power and embrace only the female power, then all the blocks on her power automatically disintegrate and she becomes a superhero that no one can stand against, that has unlimited power. As they've said over and over again, from the writers to the directors to the people playing the parts, she is Earth's mightiest superhero after that point, because she has access to unlimited power. Which brings us right back to that axiom, believe in yourself and you can do anything. You see, Carol gets to that point where she rejects all of that male power that was dominating her all of her life. She accepts all of that female power, and as soon as she accepts that power, she can believe fully in herself, and then she can do anything. So, hopefully I've given you something new to think about. If I did, hit like, hit the shield in the lower right hand corner of your screen to subscribe, and leave me a comment. Tell me what you think about all this. Alright, I'll see you later. Bye.